black gates of the Virelin palace stood broken, twisted like melted metal under a dying sun, and Captain Elias Ward stepped through them slowly, his rifle ready in his boots, crunching over shards of obsidian crystal that had once lined the royal walkway. Smoke curled from the wreckage around him, and alien flames flickered in colors his visor couldn't even name. Looking at the broken pillars and statues that once belonged to the most feared empire in this part of the galaxy. But now the palace was silent, too silent, and that silence screamed danger. Elias kept his weapon steady, his eyes scanning every corner, every shadow, because although the war between Earth and the Virulence had reached its final chapter, he knew the last pages of any war were often the bloodiest. His team had gone silent an hour ago after breaching the perimeter, and no one had responded to his calls since, leaving him alone in this ruined stronghold, surrounded by rumors of betrayal, ancient technologies, and whispers of something darker than war hiding. In the Queen's inner chambers, the walls were covered in scorched alien symbols, some pulsing faintly with dying energy. And every now and then, Elias passed what looked like a body, though it was hard to tell if it was Virelin or human. Their armor, like their blood, tended to mix after enough explosions. Deep inside, past collapsed arches and shattered glass that floated strangely in the stale air. He reached the throne room, and what he saw made him stop cold there, slumped against the base of a black throne that pulsed with faint blue light, was Queen Sirlith, ruler of the Virelin hive, her body trembling, purse, chest rising and falling with effort, and a long wound stretched across her side where silver blue blood spilled out in thick streams, soaking the floor beneath her like glowing ink. Her one shining armor was cracked and bent, one of her 4 arms limp at her side, and the crystal crown that marked her as monarch lay shattered at her feet. Elias raised his weapon instinctively, but she didn't move. She only lifted her head slowly, her eyes dim, her voice thin as smoke as she whispered, "It's human, you must not touch me." And the way she said it, fearful, desperate, not angry, made him freeze in confusion. This was supposed to be the final blow, the last mission. Bring back proof the Virelin Queen was dead, or kill her if she wasn't. Yet something in the air felt wrong, like the war had been a curtain, and now it had been pulled back to reveal something worse waiting behind it. Elias lowered his weapon slightly, his voice calm but firm as he asked what had happened. But the Queen's mandibles barely moved as she looked at him with pain and something else, pity. Sad, they betrayed me, ... my own counsel. They are not what they were, not what they seem, before coughing up more of her strange blood. And Elias felt a chill slide down his spine as he realized the throne room wasn't just broken, it was empty of guards, ministers, even drones, as if something had wiped them out or sent them fleeing in terror. He scanned the room again and noticed something odd: the throne itself, a towering structure of black stone and light, had veins of pulsing red running through it now, alive with energy that wasn't there before. And the longer he looked, the more it felt like the throne was watching him, reacting to him. He took a slow step forward, but the Queen gasped and shook her head violently, shouting, "No, do not come closer. They will find you if you touch me." And this time there was true panic in her voice, which made Elias stop again, heart pounding, trying to make sense of her warning. "Who?" he asked, keeping his voice low, and Sirlith whispered the word like it burned her throat. Synchrion. The name meant nothing to Elias at first. Something in the way she said it made his skin crawl, and she continued, speaking faster now, struggling to stay conscious, telling him the war had been a distraction, a setup, that the Synchrion were parasites, shapeshifters, things that slipped into minds and wore people like clothes, that they had been waiting inside the Virelin government for years, guiding decisions, stoking hatred, manipulating both humans and Virelins to destroy each other so they could rise from the ashes. Elias frowned, not sure if she was delirious or telling the truth. But he knew something was wrong. His HUD was flickering, his comms were down, and a low hum was starting to rise from somewhere deep beneath the floor, as if the palace itself had awakened to his presence. The queen reached beneath her broken armor with shaking fingers and pulled out a small object, a shard, glowing with a deep violet light, shaped like a crystal tooth, and held it out to him without touching him. Her voice, now barely a breath. "Take this, ... It knows you. It was made for your kind." And when Elias hesitated, unsure, she said one last thing that made him grab it without thinking. "They fear only one thing, the truth that sleeps inside your blood." The moment his fingers closed around the shard, a jolt of heat ran through his body, and visions, not images, but feelings, colors, echoes of thoughts poured into his mind, fragments of something old and buried, something human but more, and his knees nearly buckled as the shard fused to his palm like it belonged there. Sirlith gasped, a faint smile on her face now, as if seeing the shard react confirmed something for her, and she whispered, "It begins," before collapsing completely, unconscious, or worse. Elias stood there, alone with the dying queen, a living throne, in a piece of something ancient now pulsing inside him. And he realized this war had never been about territory or power, it had been a stage. And humanity was the last actor to walk onto it, unaware that the real show was only just starting. Elias stood frozen in the dark throne room, the shard now warm and glowing in his hand, its light pulsing gently against his skin like a second heartbeat. And though the queen had collapsed, he could still feel her presence, as if something inside the shard connected him to her mind. He looked down at her motionless body, her chest barely rising, and knelt carefully, not touching her, but close enough to listen for breath. Yes, she was still alive, but fading fast. The warning she had given him echoed in his ears. It's a strange name, Syncrian, stirring a quiet dread in his chest. And though he didn't fully understand what she meant, he knew she had not lied. There had been no traps, no sudden attack, no betrayal from her, only fear, real fear, the kind that came from something worse than death. Suddenly, a soft hum filled the air, rising slowly from the floor beneath him, like a heartbeat matching the shard's glow. And Elias realized something had changed. The palace was no longer just broken, it was listening, aware, and he was being watched, maybe even tracked. Okay. He moved quickly, lifting the queen gently with the help of his gravity harness, careful not to let their skin touch, and headed toward the nearest corridor, marked by a faint emergency light. As he carried her through the silent halls, Elias passed walls etched with alien writing that shimmered when the shard came close. And every step deeper into the palace felt like walking into something ancient and sleeping, something that didn't want to be disturbed. Then the queen stirred weakly, her voice like a breath of wind, and said, "You must leave before they sense you, Synchria." They watched through the blood of the hive, and Elias slowed, trying to understand, asking softly, "What are they?" And her answer was not a name or a species, but a story, broken and trembling, as she spoke of a time before the war, when the Varellan hive was united and strong, before shadows entered the council chambers, before whispers spread that humans were a threat, before her own guards turned on her with empty eyes and voices not their own. She said the Syncrian were not conquerors, they were infiltrators, parasites, things that did not invade planets, but ideas, living in thoughts, hiding in forms, slipping into leaders and lovers, until no one could tell who was real anymore. She said they first came in peace, disguised as diplomats or scientists, but they never left, and by the time she realized it, half her council was already theirs. The queen coughed again, more silver blood spilling from her lips, and Elias felt the shard react, pulsing harder, glowing brighter, as if responding to her pain. They reached an old service tunnel, hidden behind a false wall, and slipped inside just before heavy footsteps echoed down the main corridor, the sound of boots, but not human ones, fast and precise, too many at once. Elias pressed himself against the tunnel wall, holding his breath, and peeked through a crack to see figures in sleek black armor with mirrored visors, moving like machines, scanning the area with energy rifles drawn. They said nothing, made no hand signs, no noises at all, and the air around them seemed colder, heavier, as if reality bent slightly wherever they walked. Elias stayed still until they passed, and then moved deeper into the tunnel, guided by the Queen's weak directions. She spoke of a hidden launch pad below the palace, long forgotten, where old diplomatic ships used to land before the war began, and Elias followed the tunnel downward. The walls narrowing, the lights dimming, the silence pressing in like weight. Every now and then the Queen whispered things that made little sense, words in her own language. Names of people he didn't know, warnings that didn't fit the moment, but one sentence repeated clearly: "They will come for you now." The shard made you visible to them. Elias didn't ask what that meant. He felt it in his bones. The sense that something vast and alien had turned its gaze toward him the moment he touched the crystal. When they finally reached the lower platform, the air was thick with dust and old fuel, and one ship, a sleek diplomatic cruiser with virulent markings, still sat in the dock, powered down but intact. Elias placed the Queen gently in the co-pilot seat, then moved to the console, fingers moving fast as he scanned the unfamiliar controls. And to his surprise, the shard in his palm lit up, and the ship responded, systems humming to life, as if recognizing him through the ancient tech. Behind them, distant alarms began to scream. The Syncrian, no longer searching quietly now, they were hunting. The ship rose on old engines, trembling as it lifted through the forgotten shaft. And, just as the docking gate opened above them, black-armored figures dropped from the ceiling, weapons raised, eyes flashing ready. Elias fired without hesitation, rounds slamming into armor. The Syncrian didn't fall like soldiers. They twisted, folded, moved like shadows around his shots, and one lunged for the cockpit till the Queen raised her head and unleashed a sound. Not a word, but a raw psychic scream that made the air vibrate, the ship shake, and the Syncrian freeze mid-motion, their bodies cracking like glass before collapsing into stillness. She slumped again immediately, blood leaking from her eyes. Now, the effort clearly too much, and Elias launched the ship into the sky without looking back. Stars stretched across the view as they left the planet's orbit, but there was no peace, only questions, in the Queen's voice, faint but clear, whispering, "You carry it now. The key, the shard. It will guide you to the vault of echoes. There you will learn why they fear your kind." Elias asked what the vault was, where it was, but she only shook her head, closing her eyes slowly, as if every breath cost her something she no longer had. And as she drifted into unconsciousness again, Elias sat in silence, his hand still wrapped around the shard, feeling its energy hum through his veins like fire. And for the first time since the war began, he felt something stronger than duty, stronger than fear. He felt that humanity had never been what the galaxy thought it was, and that something inside him, something ancient and waiting, had just awakened. The stars drifted like cold dust outside the cruiser's canopy as Elias guided the ship through deep space. The engines low and silent, masking their path from whatever might be chasing them, and in the seat beside him, Queen Sarah Lith lay still, wrapped in a makeshift cocoon of medical gel and pressure wraps, her breathing shallow, her once glowing skin dim and cracked where the blood had dried silver against her chest. She hadn't spoken since they escaped the ruined palace. Hey. And though Elias had tried to heal her with everything in the ship's med bay, nothing worked. Her biology was too alien, and the ship's autodoc only recognized virulent injuries. In theory, not reality. Yet somehow, the shard in his hand still pulsed steadily, as if waiting for something, and every time he closed his eyes, it showed him flickers of places he had never seen: circular rooms of stone lit by blue fire, strange machines buried in crystal caves, and a massive black vault hidden beneath the surface of a red planet that throbbed like a sleeping heart. He didn't understand what he was seeing, but he knew the shard was trying to guide him, and that the vault of echoes the Queen had mentioned was real. As he traveled through forgotten lanes in dead sectors of space, dodging automated beacons, and bypassing old Virellan satellites still programmed to shoot humans on sight. Elias checked the ship's logs and discovered something even stranger. This cruiser had been launched over 40 years ago and listed as destroyed in an early border conflict. Yet it was here, fully functional, and its systems were locked behind ancient Virellan codes that only responded when he placed the shard near the interface. He didn't know how or why the shard worked for him, but he trusted it, because something in his blood burned every time he ignored its pulse. On the 5th day, as a red dwarf star blinked on the horizon, the Queen stirred again, whispering his name not in command, but in need. And when Elias turned to her, she stared at him with dim violet eyes and said, "They are hunting the last of my kind. Not just me, others, scattered, hiding." And when he asked who they were, she said, "Synchrion have taken the minds of the hives. I was not the first, it's only the last to see it before the fall." And her voice cracked as she spoke, full of pain and guilt. She said the Synchrion didn't destroy worlds, they unmade them from within. It's consuming identity, rewriting memory, turning armies into puppets and peace into war. And now they were moving toward something greater, something that required the extinction of not just the Virellans, but humans too, because humans, according to something the ancient hives once believed, carried inside them a coda forgotten genetic memory that the Synchrion feared, and the shard he now carried was a key to unlocking that memory. Elias listened carefully, not asking too many questions, because he could see her strength fading with every word. But what shook him most was what she said next. "They have already touched your kind, leaders, scientists. You will not know until it is too late, unless you reach the vault." The words chilled him because they meant Earth wasn't safe, not from an invasion, but from a slow takeover that might have already begun, and the only clue he had was buried somewhere in the vault. The shard now guided him toward the ship, followed the shard's signal to a derelict moon orbiting a forgotten gas giant. Its surface cracked and dry, and below it, buried beneath thick layers of stone, was a signal, faint but steady, that the Queen confirmed with a weak nod was one of the old beacons used by her people before the Great Split. They landed in silence, the dust curling up around the ship like fog. And as Elias helped her into a support sling, she grabbed his wrist suddenly and said, "If I fall, you must not open the vault alone. You must bring one more of my kind. Only together will it respond fully. Without balance, it will break you." He didn't understand what she meant, but nodded anyway and carried her carefully into the ancient structure, hidden beneath the moon's surface, using the shard to unlock sealed doors and pass through echoing corridors lined with statues of creatures he didn't recognize. Some looked like Virellans, others like something older, taller, beings with 4 eyes and long fingers, staring into the dark as if they waited for judgment. The vault's core chamber was circular and massive, with a smooth black floor and walls that pulsed softly with light. And in the center stood a platform with a crystal cradle, perfectly shaped for the shard. But as Elias approached, the Queen groaned in pain, collapsing at the edge of the platform. clutching her side as her wounds reopened, blood pouring like liquid silver over the stone. Elias rushed to her side, shouting her name, but she only smiled weakly, touching his cheek with one cracked claw, and said, "They will come now. They feel the vault waking. They cannot allow it to open. Finish what I could not." And then her hand dropped and her chest stilled. And Elias felt something inside him, cracked not just sadness, but a rising fury, a loss that went deeper than logic. 'Cause he had not only lost an ally, but the last of a dying race, one who had chosen to trust him in her final hours. He stood slowly, holding the shard in both hands, and as he placed it into the cradle, the room shuddered with energy, the walls lighting up with ancient runes that danced like fire, and in his mind, a voice echoed not hers, but something older, layered with thousands of tones, saying, "One soul remains. Balance must be restored. Find the mirror of the flame." And then the floor split open, revealing a deep chamber below, where something vast and glowing pulsed like a heart beneath crystal. Elias didn't know what it meant by mirror of the flame, but he understood this much. The vault had awakened. The Synchrion were coming, and to survive what came next, he would need to find another Virulent if any still lived on together, unlock whatever truth had been buried for so long beneath war, lies, and shadow. Elias stood alone at the edge of the deep crystal chamber beneath the moon, the vault of echoes now fully awake around him, the shard still pulsing inside its cradle, sending thin threads of light into the walls like roots spreading through forgotten ground. And though the queen's body remained still behind him, something of her voice still lingered in the vault's hum, as if she had become part of it in death, merged with the ancient system built long before either of their peoples had risen to power. The air inside the vault shimmered faintly, live with static and a low vibration that Elias could feel in his bones. And when he stepped onto the stairs, descending into the glowing core, the lights responded, growing brighter, revealing images, and the walls that changed with every step, scenes from forgotten histories, battles fought in empty space, Virulents standing beside human-looking figures dressed in long robes, symbols etched into the air, and dark shapes with many eyes hiding behind the stars, always watching, always waiting. Elias couldn't look away, each image sending a sharp chill through him, as if some part of him already remembered them, though he'd never seen them before. And by the time he reached the final platform at the base of the chamber, the walls had turned dark and smooth, reflecting not his face, but different versions of himself, one in armor stained with blood, one reaching out to a crying child, one standing over a ruined earth with fire in his eyes. He turned away quickly, breathing hard, and approached the massive object in the center of the room, an orb floating just above the ground, slowly spinning, surrounded by rings of alien script that twisted and rearranged themselves whenever he blinked. And as he reached out to touch it, the shard in the cradle above fired a beam of light down onto the orb, and everything froze. The orb opened like a flower, revealing a glowing pool of energy, and in that light, voice rose, not the queen's, and not the one from before, but something ancient, tired, and filled with sorrow, saying, "You are too early, yet also too late. Only together can the lock be turned. Where is the mirror?" And Elias stepped back, frustrated, whispering, "She's gone. I couldn't save her." But the voice replied, "She is not the mirror. She was the key. You must still find the mirror, or the vault will devour you." Before he could ask more, the orb collapsed into itself, sending out a pulse of light that showed him a map of solar system he didn't recognize, with one planet marked in crimson, spinning slowly as if under siege, and the word Tarsanil burned itself into his mind. The map faded, and the orb vanished, leaving only silence, and Elias turned, heart pounding, realizing that whatever secrets were inside the vault were locked by balance, by something ancient that required both human and Virellan presence, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, two minds shaped by different paths, but joined by a common truth. He returned to the surface, carrying the queen's body wrapped in a silver shroud, and buried her beneath the dust of the dead moon, placing the shard back into his belt, feeling it dim but still alive, waiting. Once back in the ship, he plotted a course to Tarsanil, a planet hidden in the shadow of three suns, its location wiped from human charts decades ago after rumors of bioweapons and failed experiments. And though the journey would take days, he knew he had no other choice. As the ship entered deep space, Elias stared at the stars, thinking of what the vault had shown him, images of a past he never knew, of a war fought not just with weapons, but with memory, of ancient creatures erased from time, and humans standing beside beings of light and flame in unity against the darkness. Hey, and he wondered what the Syncrian truly wanted. Was it control, survival, or destruction? But the shard gave no answers, only pulsed faintly whenever he thought too deeply, like a warning. Halfway through the journey, Elias awoke from a restless sleep to find the ship's lights flickering, and in the reflection of the cockpit glass, he saw something standing behind him, a tall, thin shadow with too many joints and no face, watching silently. He spun around, weapon drawn, but nothing was there. And the moment passed like a bad dream. Yet the shard throbbed violently for several minutes after, as if afraid, and Elias realized the Syncrian had found him again. Perhaps not physically, but mentally, testing the edges of his mind, looking for weakness. When he finally reached Tarsanil, the planet looked as broken as the rumors claimed, its surface a patchwork of ruins and overgrown cities, with orbiting debris fields and old satellites blinking out erratic signals. He landed near a tall spire, made of black stone, the same kind used in the vault's walls. And as he stepped outside, the air was thick and heavy, but breathable. And the shard flared in his palm, pointing not to the spire, but beneath it, where an ancient door lay hidden, beneath vines and sand. Inside, the ruins were quiet, but not dead faint. Power hummed through the walls, lights flickering like a heartbeat, and in the center of the chamber, in a stasis pod surrounded by broken machines, lay another Virellan, female, younger, with the same sharp features and glowing skin, though hers was dimmed by time and cold sleep. Elias placed the shard against the control panel, and with a hiss of air, the pod opened, and she gasped awake, her eyes wild with fear, till she saw him in the shard, and her breath slowed, her gaze narrowing with suspicion as she whispered, "Who sent you?" And Elias replied simply, "The last queen. She's dead, but she said I'd need your help to unlock the vault." The Virellan stared at him for a long time, then sat up slowly, rubbing her temples, and said, "If she chose you, there is little time left. I am Cirith, last of the Vault-born, and I remember everything they wanted us to forget." Elias didn't fully understand what that meant, but Cirith rose to her feet with surprising strength, walking past him toward the exit, saying, "If you carry the shard, then they will come for you. They already see through your eyes. The vault is only the beginning. The real war has not yet begun." And as they left the ruins together, returning to the ship, Elias knew that what waited in the Vault of Echoes was not just knowledge or history, but a weapon or truth so dangerous. The Syncrian and the galaxy itself had tried to bury it, and now, with the human and the last Virellan Vault-born united, that truth would finally rise again. As the ship left the ruins of Tarsanil, Elias and Cirith stood side by side in the cockpit, the stars reflecting in the glass, while the shard pulsed brighter than ever before, glowing gold and silver in Elias's hand, like it had found what it had been waiting for, And though Cirith had not said much since awakening, Elias could see the weight of old memories pressing against her thoughts, her eyes always scanning the darkness, her fingers twitching near the weapon at her side, and her body tensing every time the ship gave the smallest mechanical hiss. As if she still didn't trust the silence of space, she finally spoke after hours of silence, her voice low and sharp, saying that the Syncrian would never erase. Not truly, they were a disease, a thing born from a dead star and a broken machine, spreading from mind to mind, turning free thought into code, feeding on fear and memory, and worse, they had no center, no body to destroy, only fragments hiding in machines, in AI cores. In people too blind to see, they'd already been infected. She said that long ago, before the first contact wars, the virulents had sealed parts of themselves into the vaults, not just knowledge, but voices, pieces of their minds, preserved in pure memory so the Syncrian could not rewrite the mind. That's why the vault needed both a human and a virulent, 'cause the old creators had believed humans carried something unknown in their DNA, something chaotic and immune to total control. And now that Elias and Cirith were joined, the vault would open fully, but not without a cost. The shard began showing Elias new visions, fleets of ships burning in orbit around twin stars, a battlefield where humans and virulents once fought side by side. Something black rising from the heart of a planet, swallowing entire cities into shadow, and he understood then that the vault would not give them answers without a fight, and that someone or something was trying to keep them from reaching it. As they entered the twin sun system, known in old maps as Duran Split, the warning lights on the console flared red. Cirith spun toward the screen, just as 5 unknown ships decloaked behind them, sleek and long like spears of shadow, moving without heat or sound, the mark of Syncrian craft. And Elias dove the ship downward toward a debris field to avoid a direct hit, his hands flying over the controls while Cirith activated the ship's old turrets, her body calm even as the metal around them screamed under the first barrage. The enemy ships didn't fire like normal vessels. They pulsed, sending bursts of compressed gravity and sound that bent space itself. And Elias had to fly through torn reality, dodging the strange warps, while Cirith returned fire, her shots, guided by some instinct Elias couldn't match, striking 2 of the crafts and making them vanish into black flame with no sound at all. They dove toward the second sun's orbit, the heat nearly tearing the hull apart. But the chaos gave them cover, and as they sped through the corona, Cirith whispered that the vault was directly below the twin stars, hidden inside a false asteroid, masked by stellar radiation, a place no living being had entered in thousands of years. And Elias pushed the ship toward it while alarms howled. Fire trailed from the wings, and one last Syncrian vessel followed close behind, its weapons powering up for a final shot. At the last second, Elias flipped the ship on its side and let it spin, the shard glowing white now, and the Syncrian beam missed them by inches and struck the asteroid below, except the asteroid wasn't real. Not completely, because of the moment it was hit, the illusion fell away, revealing a vast black structure in the shape of an open eye, its surface marked with thousands of tiny windows that blinked once in welcome. The vault had opened for them, and Elias flew directly inside, the enemy ship trying to follow but as it crossed the threshold. The vault reacted, sending a wave of energy backward that sliced the enemy vessel in half, scattering its remains into harmless pieces of metal and ash. Inside, the vault was a maze of light and memory, corridors shaped by thought rather than stone, with walls that shifted as they moved, showing Elias and Cirith their pasts, their fears, their hopes, and something deeper, hidden thread connecting both their species to a third, forgotten race that had once built the vaults to protect a secret power known only as the flame beyond thought. A force that could rewrite minds, rebuild time, and undo the Syncrian completely, but only if awakened by true balance. Cirith led them to the core chamber, and there, a great machine awaited them, part organ, part engine, part mind, and when they placed the shard into its heart, the entire vault trembled. Stars flickered in the sky outside, and a voice, older than memory, spoke in every language at once, saying, "One mind in shadow, one in fire. Together you may light the flame. But know this, the Syncrian is already here." The vault door sealed, and from within the walls, figures emerged, Syncrian infiltrators, tall and broken. Their bodies, half machine, half flesh, with eyes that blinked in unnatural rhythms, and they spoke not with mouths, but with thoughts, trying to worm their way into Ilias's head, promising him peace, power, or even a way to bring the queen back. But Elias gritted his teeth, focused on Cirith's voice, calling to him through the noise, raised the vault's defense systems with the shard. Beams of golden light tearing through the enemies as the vault itself came alive like a beast in its final defense. The battle lasted only minutes, but each second felt eternal, the vault shaking as reality itself bent and twisted under the assault. And at the center of it all stood Elias and Cirith, side by side, guiding the ancient machine toward its final purpose, not to destroy, but to reveal. And when the last Syncrian fell, a great silence descended. And then the flame appeared, not fire, but memory, truth. Light shaped like possibility, and it entered them both, burned through their minds, and left behind understanding. The Syncrian could not be killed like a creature. They had to be rewritten, uninvited, from the code of reality. And now, with the vault's power, they had a chance. As the twin suns aligned above the vault, the machine sent out a pulse across the stars, wakening other forgotten places, calling those still free to rise. And Cirith looked to Elias and said, "This is not the end. It is the warning bell. The real war begins now." And as they left the vault behind, stars no longer felt so empty, because something ancient had returned to the galaxy. Hope. As the ship moved away from the vault, its engines flickering with strange blue light, pulled from the ancient flame, Elias sat quietly in the cockpit, watching the stars turn above him while Cirith stood near the shard, her hand resting on the smooth surface as if listening for something deeper, something only she could hear. And though they had won a battle, the feeling of peace did not follow, because both of them knew that the signals sent out from the vault had done more than awaken old defenses across the galaxy. It had also called the Syncrians' full attention, and they would not strike in silence again. Cirith turned slowly, her voice calm but tight, saying, "They will come now, not in small ships, not with spies, but with the full weight of their will. The flame has warned me they are already shaping new lies across human space, planting fear, doubt, division, because they know unity is what we need most." And Elias nodded, gripping the controls, thinking of Earth, of the old cities, of leaders who still believed the Syncrian were just myths or software, not a force spreading between thoughts like sickness. Their destination now was the Core Council, the last group of worlds not yet touched by Syncrian infection, where leaders from many species gathered in secret, hidden in a drifting citadel between stars. And it was there Elias would speak, not just as a soldier, but as the bearer of the shard, the one who had opened the vault and survived the flame. And though he hated politics, he knew he had no choice, 'cause the flame had shown him a future where humanity fell not from invasion, but from silence, from disbelief, from trusting the wrong voices. As they approached the citadel, the ship's systems flickered again, not from damage, but from something watching them. Data streams twisting in the background, false messages appearing in system logs, and Cirith snapped her fingers, drawing his eyes to a new screen where a message had appeared. Queen, not gone. Coordinates attached. Warning, memory not whole. Elias froze, reading the line again, and then another screen blinked to life, showing a distant moon wrapped in strange blue fog. One he didn't recognize, but the shard pulsed hot in his pocket, as if confirming the truth. He turned to Sirith, confused, asking, how can she still be alive? I buried her myself, and Sirith narrowed her eyes, stepping closer, saying, the Synchrian do not always kill. Sometimes they copy, sometimes they trap. Perhaps the queen you buried was her echo, and the real one is still locked inside their machine. Before Elias could speak again, alarms blared and the citadel came into view, but smoke rose from its outer ring. Fire dancing in space where defense towers had been, and they saw smaller ships fleeing the station as Synchrian drones swarmed, like black insects, breaking the shields one layer at a time. Without waiting for orders, Elias dove the ship into the fray, weapons flaring as Sirith took over defense controls, targeting the Synchrian one by one with precision learned over centuries. Her face, calm, sharp, and deadly, they broke through the enemy line. Elias saw escape pods drifting toward them filled with council members, wounded guards, and civilians, and the shard flared again, pointing him toward the citadel's damaged core, where a pulse of strange energy flickered like a heartbeat. They landed inside a ruined hangar, smoke and fire licking the walls. And as they stepped out, the voices of Synchrian whispers hit them at once, pleading, tricking, offering peace and power. But Elias held the shard close and pressed forward, Sirith shielding them with bursts of light from the flame embedded in her suit. Inside the council chamber, they found only one survivor, Admiral Rain, the human leader Elias had once served under, his arm torn and blood running down his temple, but still alive. And when he saw Elias, his eyes widened in shock, whispering, you, the last queen spoke of you. I didn't believe her. But she knew this was coming, and Elias knelt, asking, what did she say? How did she know? And Rain laughed bitterly, saying, she was here, weeks ago. Or someone who looked like her. Said the real war wouldn't start until the vault opened. Said you'd have to choose between her and the galaxy. Elias felt his heart twist, unsure if he'd been fooled. Queen had planned this from the beginning, even in her dying breath. They evacuated the survivors to the ship, and as they launched back into orbit, the shard grew hotter, pulling them not toward Earth, not toward another vault, but back toward that strange blue moon from the message, where answers waited, and maybe something worse. They arrived days later, and the moon looked dead at first. No atmosphere, no signal, just silence. But as they descended through the fog, a strange shape appeared beneath the surfacing enormous structure, shaped like a spiral, half buried in stone. And as they stepped inside, Elisa's breath caught, 'cause the walls were the same as the first vault, only colder, more mechanical, and in the center, inside a transparent cell, stood the queen, weak, bleeding, but alive, her eyes locked on Elias as she whispered, human, you must not touch me. They've made me into a key. And her body trembled, flickering like a ghost, part real, part code. Elias wanted to run to her, but Sirith stepped between them, shouting, it's a trap. They want you to complete the circuit. If you touch her, they can rewrite everything you are. But the queen looked at Elias again, tears in her eyes, and said, I am not just bait. I am the lock, and you are the last gate. And Elias stood frozen between two truths, one shaped by the flame, the other by the queen, knowing that no matter what he chose, the cost would be high. Then, without warning, the room around them shifted, walls bending, floor twisting, and the Synchrian voice returned not in whispers now, but as a chorus, loud and clear, saying, choose the queen or choose the fire, but not both. And Elias screamed in frustration, looking at Cirith, looking at the queen, then holding the shard out in front of him, forcing it to glow brighter than before, shouting, "I choose neither. I choose humanity." And with that, the shard shattered, not broken, but transformed its light, becoming a wave that passed through the room, tearing apart the illusion, revealing that the queen had never been fully captured. She had stayed, willingly holding the Synchrian within this cage to delay their rise. And now that Elias had made the choice, she smiled, blood dripping from her lips, and said, "Thank you. Now I can finish it." And she turned to the machine behind her, fusing herself into its heart, activating a long-dead weapon that sent a pulse across space, blinding and bright, aimed at every Synchrian node in the galaxy. The room shook violently, and Cirith grabbed Elias, pulling him toward the ship as the entire moon began to collapse. And from orbit, they watched as the structure exploded, sending light through the stars, and then silence. The flame within Cirith grew quiet, no longer pulsing with warning. And the shard, though broken, rested like dust in Elias's palm, warm and still. In the weeks that followed, reports came in from every system. Synchrian signals had vanished. Ships freed from control, minds restored, and for the first time in 100 years, the stars were quiet again. Elias stood on the deck of the ship, looking at Earth as it rose in the distance. And he thought of the Queen's last words, not a cry for help, not a command, but an oath made with her final breath, to protect what she could no longer touch. And as Cirith stood beside him, silent and strong, Elias whispered, "She kept her promise. Now it's our turn." And the stars, for once, did not whisper back.